Thank you, dear Father Manu, and also Father Jose. I hope I'm audible. I'm
Yes,
audible.
yes.
Okay. Um, um, I spent a few days reflecting on this topic, millennials and teens in the COVID era, especially in the times where we have been for the past few months in a lockdown, going through the whole global crisis of this pandemic and preparing ourselves for what is also going to happen ahead. We still don't know how our months, the time to come, are going to be, how our days will be, and so we are all in a very caught up situation. And I spent just reflecting on this and finding out from some young friends and looking into social media and other places to see how young people are spending their days during the situation. To begin with, this situation, it came all of a sudden, this pandemic, this crisis, global crisis, and soon it was declared a pandemic by WHO. And sooner in India, we realized that, it is hitting countries and it had even invaded India. And it created a lot of, initially, I think we were all very casual about it, especially young people. I myself was taking it like a pinch of salt. I remember going, traveling those days in the beginning of March, second week of March, traveling, and in spite of sometimes, maybe my parents telling me or some relatives telling to be careful, not to go to hospitals, not to go in public places and public transport. I remember we were very casual, and mostly young people were very casual about it. We took it like maybe another viral fever, or maybe another health problem, or something that has come across and will pass away, because we've been through, we had Ebola last year, and then we had another virus. And so I think we took it very lightly, but soon we realized that it was serious, particularly when the lockdown was declared in our country. And it was interesting to see, now we've been over 2 months in a lockdown, and a few things that I've noticed in my own life personally, and in various other young people, especially teens and millennials. Millennials being particularly the youth, and teens more or less the students of today. How things develop in their days, and soon it became months. Some good things did happen, definitely, with this pandemic, or I would say with the situation of the pandemic, the lockdown and everything. A lot of young people got closer to their dear ones. We started spending time with family, with our near and dear ones, started spending more time at home, which, usually on social media, young people put it up as the me time, where I spend time with myself and to a lot of things, pampering myself and with my family, and things that we usually waited for, a long time, but then we wouldn't get it because of our busy lives and a lot of other factors. Realizing the value of social associations, a lot of young people started realizing the importance and value of, their relationships with others, their friends, feeling of being detached from friends for a few days, being in a lockdown where you won't be able to go out for maybe any excursions or for any picnics, relaxations, to meet friends, family, relatives. A lot of young people did also start spending time in introspection, because obviously when they are alone by themselves in the house, a good number, as we know, our youth are migrants in other cities and bigger metropolitans. So, that solitude made them spend more time in introspection, time to finally sit in silence and, maybe ponder on their lives, and a lot of other things, a lot of thoughts going across. More learning, definitely, which I think was evident, all of us would have come across. Children and young people, spending their time on the internet, on maybe trying to pick up some online course, some challenges, or some maybe reading. Some started reading books, some explored some talents and tried to do cooking and some more skills. So a lot of learning also we saw taking place. Exploring different, creativity, talents, hobbies. I think a lot of hobbies that were lying, just kept in the cupboard or stacked up for years. We started exploring those hobbies and creativities. I myself started spending more time to see recipes and try cooking. which a lot of people also did. A lot of other different hobbies and skills. Some young people enrolled in online programs and courses, different skills to develop personality on maybe communication, on music, etc. A lot of young people came up with new initiatives and new ideas. I think it was very evident. We saw a lot of young people going out and doing a lot of work, a lot of online programs and courses and things they came up with gradually. So a lot of initiatives and ideas, realizing the value of nature, health, and life, particularly. How important the nature is, because people, I think, especially the youth and children, for the first time in our lives, came across a situation where we realized that everything was beyond our control. There was a biological factor, a virus that was just controlling everything, and with all the best possible facilities, infrastructures, medical science, and research. I myself being a medical field research student, that realization of being helpless, at the hands of nature, at the hands of life, and then the time to give focus or prioritize our health, taking up all these initiatives of social distancing and sanitization, a lot of things which I think even now we see even the rural youth, or remotest of children and youth, conscious about these things, the importance of hygiene, cleanliness, washing hands, etc., etc. And of course, realizing the value of life, because that one factor being the fear of losing your life to a virus, one factor being realizing the effect it has, in terms of isolation, in terms of being confined, in terms of not being able to really do a lot of things even though you want to. So a lot of things were happening. um, the courage, a lot of young people, they had this conviction. We came to the realization of surviving with the bare minimum. We came to this realization that now that we were in a lockdown, we were able to sustain our groceries, sustain with whatever we had in the house. And it came with the realization that um, uh, how much of resources and probably finances and so many other things we tend to waste and overindulge in, which now we were able to control. So a lot of things, a lot of good developments, which I call. But then I feel this entire situation, this pandemic, and of course, my talk here today is not only to highlight all the developments and good things that have happened in the lives of young people, which is, I think, known to all of us. It is I would like to go more deeper into understanding what this COVID era, we are calling it an era because we don't know how long it will be. It could be a year, 2 years. Some sources say 5 years. Some say it may never go. So what, this era is costing a change in attitude and dimensions and a lot of other aspects of young people. Um, I already spoke about, we saw young people, develop a lot of sensitivity and realizations, in this situation. A lot of young people went out, to mobilize and to volunteer for different services, to create awareness, uh, be it in forms of maybe doing street plays, or in forms of making videos, or written or visual articles. A lot of different ways of sensitization took place. Outreach, social outreach. A lot of young people went out distributing groceries and sanitizers, masks, etc. Uh, a lot of young people also, came up with new ideas, new ventures of manufacturing, maybe things that were required. It was interesting to see how the sensitization took place in young people, students. Even I remember my own younger brother, who is about 11 years old, reading about what is the virus, what is a pandemic, what is a global crisis. A lot of things, a lot of sensitization, what I would say, took place. But then, it is not only, we need to focus not only on healthcare solutions. At present, a lot of things that we were doing was about healthcare, about groceries, sanitization, and awareness about the hygiene we need to keep when we get back to normal life. A lot of those things. But then it is also about something much more, a recovery that needs to focus on climate, sustainability, and societal risks. Now, what are these societal risks are some of which I will be talking in the next few minutes. Some are like inequality, mental health, the lack of cohesion, inclusion, and a lot of other things in the society. Definitely a few values that young people learned in the situation. We saw it in our own houses, in our neighborhood, in maybe in institutions. That feeling of universality, of fraternity, sharing, that we need to share what we have beyond boundaries of caste, religion, creed, color. uh, that sensitivity, as we already I spoke about. Combined efforts, moreover, it did not matter again from what background people belonged, whether poor, rich, or any categorization. Social consciousness, definitely, on various aspects, on the health aspects, on the psycho spiritual aspects, political aspects, economic aspects. A lot of social consciousness was developed or imbibed in young people. Respect towards others, I think was something that we saw, how young people developed a sense of respect, maybe for certain people in need, or maybe their family or someone at risk, and accompanying them, and being giving them that necessary compassion that was required. The values of patience, ownership, the patience to go through this situation, the patience to wait, to get back to a new normal that we're talking about, the patience to sail through all the challenges that have been there, taking ownership for the situation that we are in. I think everyone became responsible for their own lives, for their own near and dear ones, and of course, um, a lot of other essentials, a lot of other essential factors, feelings. um, but then I would now like to talk about the aspect of education, jobs, careers, and employment in young people. We were already in a situation where most of the young people who were in their 20s and 30s had already relatively levels of income, in terms of owning a house or having savings, investments, according to some sources. A lot of young people had still not come out of the global recession of 2008. Some were just barely managing to revive their lives and economy. This, I'm talking about the people who are particularly in their maybe mid 30s today. For the youngers, it is the first time. But then there was already a lot of unrest, with just 12 years ago, another global crisis that we had of a global recession. And that's when it comes to it. It brought us to realize that this COVID-19, which came all of a sudden, which struck sudden, was also a threat for young people, old people definitely in terms of health, and young people in various other aspects of education. Where we are now expecting 80% of students to suffer gaps in their academic in their academics, maybe dropping out. Some will drop out, some are not able to get through admissions. Many are facing financial crisis with the family, and the whole worry of how long will the family be able to sustain them in a situation like this, where probably their future plans will be delayed for a year. A lot of aspects. For young students, about 80% of the students at present, which is more than 1.6 billion young people, do not attend school. Now, this is something already, it might be surprising for some of you to know, but then at present, before the pandemic, already 80% of the students in the world were not going to schools, not attending a formal school. Now, what happens after this pandemic? There are many others who are not, in fact, everyone who are not able to attend schools right now. For some privileged, there are online classes, a lot of online virtual learning happening, but then there are also many vulnerable and poor communities that do not have the necessary infrastructure and tools to cope up with this online learning. I remember hearing some stories of some students in remote areas where there are 3 and 4 kids in a house, but they just have one phone, one smartphone. So how are they to cope up with e-learning and all of these infrastructure, these new tools nowadays? The next risk is this has brought kids to gain access to the online world. I saw it with my own brother, 11 years old, who earlier was very restricted to only gaming on the phone, but then now he's well versed with the internet, with browsing and searching. necessary study materials online. um, you know uh, so that is it's a worry of at a very young age kids being exposed to so much. I remember a point where my mother herself had to tell me to activate parental control on the phone, and lock and adult lock and all of those things. So another risk that we will be facing with young kids being uh, exposed to the world wide web and the online world. Another aspect is a lot of students are not able to cope up with this virtual education system. My own brother, time and again would say how bored he is, how disinterested he is because of the distractions that take place during the classes, because of not being able to focus, the apprehension of asking questions, a lot of other factors that kids are going through with these classes, with this online virtual learning. And that brings us to a question that are we prepared for this kind of an education system if it is to last long? Is it effective? Have we analyzed the pros and cons while getting into a system like this? I think it's something that we all need to reflect on. And with that comes a lot of uncertainty ahead, which a lot of kids, young people are facing. The whole fear and anxiety of uncertainty ahead. In terms of loss of opportunities, a lot of young people have lost tremendous opportunities of admissions, jobs, a lot of other opportunities. Fields and careers that were considered popular, that were considered fields that would never die down, or fields that were booming, are today at risk the most. Such as tourism, hospitality, food. These were fields that usually people felt will be on the rise forever, but today it is these fields that are towards the downfall. So it is bringing a lot of dilemma in students about how to go about their career, how to go about their future in this particular situation and the few years to come. Employment and pay scales are taking a dip, and they will even more in times to come, where employers will be scared to employ people, where paying high salaries will be an apprehension in a situation like this. There will be reduced employment. So a lot of these aspects, that are a lot of uncertainties ahead, which we don't know. I think even we ourselves, we don't know. But then this entire uncertainty of the future is going to bring upon some bigger risks, such as forced child labor, skilled labor, being forced to beg. I remember encountering some kids in the market during this lockdown, and once I asked a boy that, why are you begging? And he said, I'm not a beggar. He said, I'm a mason. I help in building, in construction, but this lockdown, there are no jobs, no employment, so I'm forced to go around asking for groceries because I'm not educated to do anything else. I remember also overhearing a conversation at a traffic signal, where a girl was telling about how she is forced to go out and work because parents are uneducated, they are laborers, and whereas she goes to government school, so with her education, she's expected now to go out and bring some money in the house, with her skills and her education. So we will be entering into situations like this. Poor girls, young women will be back to the labor markets, is one fear that we are looking at, because of the situation where in our country and society, particularly where men might still be able to find jobs, boys might still be able to find opportunities, but the girls will go through this, especially from the remote areas, where there will be a lot of apprehension of sending them out, a lot of factors that we are already aware of. And will again, we might resume to a situation of a gender bias again, of which we've been battling for the past few decades and trying to overcome, and trying to get into a gender equality. We might tend to have a setback on these lines also because of this situation, where employers will be forced to maybe prefer a certain gender because of the situation and the aspects, and a lot of aspects. Again, questions that arise that we need to ponder on are, how do we ensure that opportunities, employment are accessible to the young people, to the youth? How do we skill our youth in order to be self-sufficient, to be able to maybe start up their own ventures, their own businesses? So these are few things that we need to look at. With this, I will move on to the next dimension, which I think a lot of young people spend in the past few months and are spending and will continue for the next few, at least until the situation normalizes, is, the consumption of media. The time that, there was a realization definitely in everybody about the value and importance of technology. I think us being on a virtual platform like that, a webinar and sessions like that itself made us realize the power and the value of technology. But then, talking more in terms of kids, youngsters, the media consumption. Now, these are few studies and statistics which would be interesting for you to know how young people are using media and technology. Most of it being for entertainment. Millennials, that is the present youth from 24 to 35 years of age. There are slight variations in the teens and in the young people in their preferences and how they spend their time online. But it is not a much difference. It is a very less difference. And 80% of the youth are consuming. They say they are consuming more content since this outbreak took place, particularly with broadcast TV and online videos. That is YouTube, TikTok, Netflix, and a lot of other platforms of online videos and movies, etc. Um, there are a lot of statistics here. I will not be able to go through that, but then you could have a glimpse at it. Um, WhatsApp saw a 40% increase in the usage from 20% before the pandemic to about 41% in between. And the countries that have already had the pandemic for a long time, since before, much before India, have seen a jump by 51% in the consumption. Instagram and Facebook live views doubled within a week in the month of March. Facebook shared its data where it spoke about uh, an increase by 50% in 1 month, that is month of March, over its messaging platforms, that is including Messenger, Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook, altogether. 70% increase in the group calling, that is group calling that took place, and about 1000% increase in virtual calls and conversations that took place. So we are looking at the amount of media consumption, social media exposure that took place with this crisis. There was an increased virtual interaction among people. A lot of people started interacting virtually more, particularly in small groups where families would catch up on Zoom or other, Google Meet and Facebook Live and all other portals. Families would come together. Uh, Business meetings were happening online. Work meetings were happening online. Uh, Groups that earlier would, people that who would travel for a meeting started having it online. Sessions, classes, lectures, a lot of things online. So a lot of virtual interaction increased. Now here, as I said, the kids were more exposed to playing games on the mobile or computer, whereas millennials, with their interests in other hobbies and passions, did explore a lot of other things like music, cooking, etc. But now all of this is not alarming. There is a statistics from Zoom on the page which shows that how Zoom's net worth today is even more than the top 7 airlines combined, and this took place within 1 month. With this entire sudden boom of realizing and exploring virtual interactions and online communication. Um, Now, all of this is not a worry. The worry is not about the screen time that youth and kids are spending. It is not about the time that we are spending virtually. But the worry is, uh, what are they consuming? For what are they spending the screen time? And the impact that could have on the psychological well-being of a person. Now, here are the top 100 websites that were viewed or that were visited mm, by particularly young people in this past 2 months. This is of the month of March and April. We can see some of the popular sites, Google, Facebook, YouTube, that were visited. Now, it may not be visible to you, but in the top 10 sites, there were also, websites that were earlier not in the top 10, that are risky for various reasons. Certain maybe sites of warfare games. There are sites of pornographic content. Three websites of pornographic content in the top 10 viewed websites. So again, a statistics of the increase in the traffic that porn sites saw over just about 2 weeks in the month of Feb to March, the onset of this pandemic, how it grew from from very less to a lot more. And in fact, a very popular site, it spoke about 11.6% increase in the global visits within a week by the end of March. And soon, one such website gave out free subscriptions of their premium services for 1 month. Now, the risk here is, we will talk about that. This pandemic, it is not just affecting, the amount and type of pornographic content that is being viewed, but it is how much people are consuming it and what are they searching on major sites is the worry. I went through a few research articles, and I cannot explain and elaborate on that here, but it is alarming, or I would say shocking, to know what people are viewing, what are they searching, what are they spending their time online, particularly even in pornographic websites. And there was a study of the human brain responses to such situations of maybe global pandemics or global crisis, a situation like this, which explains that when a person goes through feelings of uncertainty, fear, and anxiousness, it results in either the actions of agitation, destruction, attachments, or pleasure, which are usually the four mechanisms of the body to cope up with unrest. And now, something beyond this. Now, why I spoke about this, it is not just about porn being viewed or pornographic content that young people invested more time in. It is something much more beyond this. This brings us to realize a few things. First is the risk of exploitation and human trafficking. I was reading a study that is talking about uh, the more vulnerable and the more exposed, more people will be on the web, in terms of such sexually explicit content in the dark web, because of this situation. Um, and the second is, what are they searching for on the major sites, which I will not speak here, but then you can always go and check online, what is it. um, and there were very visible signs on social media that I saw, and many people noticed, that young people youth went through in this last 2 to 3 months throughout the world. One was boredom. A lot of young people, I've highlighted boredom and idleness because I think those are the two things that almost every young person, even others, went through: boredom, idleness, not knowing how to spend your time, extra time, a more isolated life, seclusion, where you are just confined to your home and maybe your family at home, few people, the same people to see every day, which led to eventually home arrest, a feeling of home arrest and frustration at home. I remember young people sharing about the frustration they're going through, seeing the same faces every day. Some who were not very homely and family oriented people are now forced to spend that time with the family, which sometimes is not turning out in a sweet way. It is turning out rather in a bitter way, with increased frustration, agitation, fights in the house. And then a lot of young people going through the feeling of craving for that gala time, craving for that life of going out and meeting friends and hanging out and movies and malls, pubs, so that craving for that life, those who are particularly habitual or used to that kind of a lifestyle. And this has made a lot of them more exposed to various vices and addictions, because of a situation where they are confined and locked up in disparity. The exploring of, the curiosity, bringing about the exploration of different, vices and addictions. Lethargy, stressful environment, are some more things that young people have been going through. The entire stress of anxiety and stress of what lies ahead, in terms of their career, in terms of their education, their future plans. Those who were expecting to take up jobs this year, those who were expecting to migrate, So a lot of fear of what lies ahead, which is creating, uh, has already been creating and will continue to create a vulnerable feeling in young people. And one young person put it on social media like this: the life you craved for is now choking. Referring to the life of relaxation and being at home, just lazing out, lounging off, is now choking. And the life you thought was boring is the life you're hoping to get back to right now. A lot of young people are now waiting to get back to their offices. This work from home is taking a toll. They're not able to cope up with the different challenges with it and balancing time. Uh, Students are waiting to go back to school where they will run around, play, meet friends. So there is a lot of unrest which is coming out in various forms that may not be visible. A lot of young people, it will not be visible on their faces or through their lifestyle of what they are going through, but there is a lot happening internally. And a research that spoke about it found that 37% of the youth showed signs of psychological distress, 45% felt adverse effects on mental health, and about 70% were most stressed out about the situation in terms of their careers, future, everything. A few major risks and crises of this COVID era this year, the time to come until we are able to control the situation, is first is less physical associations, less meeting people, interactions, physical interviews, physical meetings, physical gatherings, physical, relationship building. A lot of, the physical associations are less. People are busier today than before, especially with work from home, with the online classes that students have to go through, and at times multitasking with various other interests online. A lot of young people are stranded and away from their home. They were caught up maybe because migrants, students, and people working elsewhere. Uh, Many of them now are on paid benches or not going to work anymore. So there is an entire worry of the money that is being spent on their sustainability, on their finances, a lot of other things, and the entire new engagement in knowledge and relationship building that is happening today, of using a more virtual manner, a more online manner of engaging in knowledge, of engaging in building relationships. There is an increase in the number of chats that young people are having, increase in the number of developing feelings that is happening, of misunderstanding feelings that is happening. So this new engagement of virtual knowledge building, relationship building, is again a major risk which could backlash eventually, when we get back to normalcy. I will now come to the spirituality part, or the spiritual dimension of this entire pandemic. I mean, there were a lot of things happening online. Different faith communities, some had online prayer meetings, particularly from the Christian background, I would speak. We had online masses, online prayer meetings, online worship sessions. A lot of things were online. And there was initially a lot of enthusiasm in people, but particularly also young people, for these virtual prayer activities, because I think somewhere the youth always wanted the option where they could sit at home and have these things accessed, sitting in an air conditioned room comfortably, and having go through all these rituals and prayers. So initially there was a lot of enthusiasm for it, and they would sign up for online prayer services and all of that. But soon young people lost interest, which I saw on social media, and also some personally shared it with me. Now, why is this? Why did soon this interest go down? If you view the live views of an online prayer service today, in the beginning it might have been in hundreds. Today it has come down to barely 10, 15. Why? First is, many young people felt it monotonous, like a TV show. I remember young people sharing that it's like sitting in front of a TV and watching something happening, with a lot of distractions around, with family and your phone on one side, and a lot of talks. Some places where people stay in small houses, difficulty to find a private space or isolation where you can really spend time personally to engage in such online activities. Then multitasking, so the inability to focus particularly. Then a lot of young people felt the lack of social interaction, the importance of, when you go to a church or a mosque, meeting your fellow, faithful, meeting your fellow people, and the sharing that takes place, the exchange of emotions and expressions, and a lot of other things that take place. Physical presence matters, as what a lot of young people said. It matters when you are physically in a place of worship, when you're physically with people, sitting in a group and praying, probably. But the same thing when you do it online, it does not build or does not boost that kind of a feeling. The impact of others on my faith and my mindset is what a lot of young people expressed. In terms of how, as I said, your interaction with someone else, the conversation you have with them, the meeting that you have with them, their expressions, and seeing their life of spirituality and faith sometimes inspires you to also engage in spiritual activities. So this was lacking. Particularly like in the Christians, a lot of young people felt the absence of the sacrament present in these virtual prayer gatherings. Um, Not being able to perform rituals. For others, not being, things like prasad and a lot of these things, uh, it mattered. It matters to people. And a lot of young people also shared about the feeling of it being forced to do at times, with a lot of people forcing to sign up, on following their pages and joining the live sessions. It became more like a norm that we had to do in a situation like this. um, and therefore, when people lost this, I've started young people have started losing this interest in this virtual form of prayer. There are other ways rather that they are engaging in, such as spending more time in self-reflection. A lot of young people have been sharing, or if you read their posts on Facebook, Instagram, etc., you will see how they are spending time in self-reflection, in reflecting and introspecting on their life, their past, analyzing and preparing for their future. They're building a personal relationship with God, looking more deep into personal or an individual spirituality, more self-consciousness of realizing where have they gone wrong, where are they disturbed, where are they likely to go wrong, and what needs to be corrected and changed. So a lot of self-consciousness, more meditation, yoga, etc. Young people have been engaging in over the past few months. Uh, this is one aspect. Some other young people, a good number of them, are also losing faith in God because of the hopelessness, a feeling of hopelessness that is coming with this whole situation, with this whole uncertainty of whether things will be normalizing ahead, whether will we get a vaccine, whether there will be a treatment, whether are things going to be better or get worse in the time to come. The backlashes that are going to continue for a long time, the economic crisis, the trust issues and crises that are going to remain for a long time. So it is creating a sense of on questioning the divine, or questioning the presence of God in their lives. Personally, this is more based on an individual or a personal experience of young people, or what they are going through in their lives individually. And with this,
Excuse me.
the summarization that comes is, a lot of young people are feeling
Excuse me,
that there
Percy.
may not. Yes,
Excuse me, Percy. You need to wind up to because you
yes,
have.
I'm almost towards the end. I will be winding up soon.
Yeah.
So the question now is, there may not be a new normal. We are talking about a new normal, and there may not be a new normal, and if at all there is, it might be a new abnormal. If we do not prepare very well for the times ahead. And I would not like to end with sharing something, or giving out a few tips, but rather throwing a few questions at all of us to reflect on in this situation. First is, how prepared are we in the event we are faced with another disaster tomorrow? We have shown exuberant skills in crisis management, in coping up with the crisis, but how well are we prepared to face another pandemic, being prepared to face another global crisis, if at all it comes tomorrow or in the next few years to come? How wide and well prepared are our research and strategic tools in coming up with sustainable solutions right from the grassroots for any future crisis? Are we really developing systems that will be able to face global crisis or challenging situations? Or are we just doing some troubleshooting and filling in the void, applying medicine on the wounds, but are we really developing an immunity system where the generations to come or the times to come will not make people vulnerable to facing the effects of something like this? Will the traumatic experiences of this pandemic be forgotten, or will they disappear over a short time scale, which usually happens with us? We tend to forget 2 years, 3 years down the line. Will we forget all of this that we have been through, or will we remember this and implement it to come up with new ways of building a world that will be more prepared to face something like this? Will we just go back to the same ideologies, mentalities, and attitudes with little and come up with a lot of presentations with little or nil impact? That is the question. Will we go back to the same old ways of doing things and just do things that may or may not have any impact, or are we going to really put in the efforts and together come up with systems and ways that will bring about a change? And as a community, what is our role towards all of this? As a Christian community, as Catholics, we have been doing a lot, not undermining that, definitely a lot. But then what is our role towards this entire situation that our younger generations, our teens and youth are going through today and might go through, and it might even intensify in the months and the years to come? And we are presented with an opportunity to change this whole cycle, because this pandemic has reset the clock. It has brought everyone and leveled the ground for all of us. So I think it is a beautiful time for us to really reflect on our systems and our approaches, our ideologies, and our ways of how we were doing things and looking into things. With this, I wind up the session and I hand it over to Father Jose. And thank you so much for this opportunity. I hope I've been able to just, twitch your nerves and be able to make you think. I was not here. I may not be an expert, but I was only just trying to help us, think a little more into understanding the whole situation of this crisis and what to do ahead. And last is to just also remember what Pope said during the synod and in Christus Vivit, for all young people, irrespective of faith and religion, is to analyze and understand the different crises that are there, and what can we do to together, together as a family, as one world, to build the world and leave behind a better world for our future generations. Thank you so much.